Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Defiant, watching the massive alien world grow larger on the main screen. The planet looked like a giant purple jewel floating in space, covered with strange crystal cities that sparkled in the light of 3 suns. This was Zephyros Prime, the homeworld of the Catherian Empire. Jake had never seen anything like it in his 20 years of space travel. Earth's cities looked small and simple compared to the towering crystal structures that reached up into the clouds. Some of the buildings were so tall they disappeared into the planet's atmosphere. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the surface," said Lieutenant Mike Davis from the communications station. "They want us to follow their ships to a landing area." Jake nodded and watched as 6 alien vessels appeared around the Defiant. The Catherian ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They looked like they were made of living glass, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and change colors as they moved. Each ship was 3 times larger than the Defiant. "Follow their lead," Jake ordered, "and remember, we're here to talk, not fight." Behind him, Admiral Lisa Carter studied the alien ships through a small viewing port. She was Earth's best military leader, and President Walsh had sent her on this mission to see what humanity was dealing with. What she saw worried her. The alien ships moved without any visible engines or exhaust. Their weapons looked like they could cut through the Defiant's armor like paper. "Their technology is far beyond ours," Lisa whispered to Jake. "I've never seen ships move like that." The Defiant landed in a huge crystal structure that seemed to grow from the ground itself. As the human crew prepared to leave their ship, they put on their best dress uniforms and checked their translation devices. One more time. This was the most important meeting in human history. The Catherians were waiting for them in a vast hall made of black crystal. The aliens were tall, almost 8 feet high, with skin that looked like clear glass. Jake could see strange organs and flowing liquids inside their bodies. Each Catherian had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their face, and they moved, with smooth, flowing motions that seemed almost like dancing. At the far end of the hall sat the most impressive Catherian of all. This was HFY the Eternal, the Supreme Chancellor of the Catherian Empire. He was larger than the others, and his crystal skin glowed with a soft blue light. Ancient scars covered his body like silver lines, and his 4 eyes studied the humans with cold interest. "Welcome, creatures of the small blue world," HFY said through the translation device. His voice sounded like wind blowing through glass chimes. "I am HFY, ruler of the Catherian Empire. We have been watching your species for some time." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing the people of Earth. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendly relations between our worlds." HFY made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace. Yes, we shall have peace. But first, you must understand your place in the galaxy." The Supreme Chancellor stood up, and his massive form cast shadows across the hall. Other Catherians gathered around the edges of the room, their eyes glowing with curiosity. Jake noticed that some of them carried weapons that looked like they were made of pure energy. "For 10,000 years, the Catherian Empire has brought order to this galaxy," HFY continued. "We have united countless worlds under our rule. We have ended wars, stopped suffering, and created peace among the stars. Now it is time for your world to join us." Admiral Carter felt her hand move toward her sidearm, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What exactly are you asking of us?" she said. HFY's 4 eyes focused on her. "I am not asking, military leader of the humans. I am telling. Your world will surrender 70% of its resources to the Empire. You will provide 1 million of your people each year to serve as workers on our worlds. Your military will be disbanded, and you will accept Catherian governors to rule your planet." Jake felt his blood run cold. "And if we refuse? Then your species will cease to exist?" HFY said simply. "We have given this same choice to thousands of worlds. Some chose wisdom and accepted our rule. Others chose foolishness and were destroyed. The choice is yours." Lisa stepped forward, her military training keeping her voice steady. "How long? Do we have to decide?" 30 of your days," Vexhai replied. We are not unreasonable. We understand that some species need time to accept the inevitable. As the meeting continued, Jake and Lisa learned more about the Catherian Empire. They ruled over 3,000 worlds and commanded a fleet of millions of ships. Their technology could destroy planets and move stars. They had never lost a war, and they had never failed to conquer a world they set their sights on. The humans were shown images of other worlds that had refused to submit. Empty planets with dead cities, shattered moons floating in space. Entire solar systems turned to dust and radiation. The message was clear. Resistance was impossible. When the meeting ended, the humans returned to their ship in silence. As the Defiant left the crystal planet behind, Jake stared out at the stars and wondered if they had just witnessed the end of human freedom. What do we tell Earth? Mike asked quietly. The truth, Jake replied. We tell them what we're facing, and we let them decide. But deep in his heart, Jake wondered what choice humanity really had. The Catherian Empire was like a giant compared to Earth's small military. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days, while Earth's fastest vessels took months to reach the nearest star. Their weapons could destroy cities from orbit, while Earth's best missiles could barely scratch their shields. As the Defiant began its long journey home, Lisa Carter stood in her quarters, studying the data they had collected on Catherian technology. There had to be something, some weakness they could exploit. Every enemy had a weakness, even if it wasn't obvious at first. On Earth, President Kevin Walsh was waiting for their report. The Global Defense Council was ready to hear what humanity was facing. In laboratories around the world, scientists were working on new weapons and defenses. But would any of it be enough? The Catherian Empire had demanded submission. Soon, Earth would have to give its answer. And whatever that answer was, it would determine whether humanity lived as slaves or died as free beings fighting for their world. The countdown had begun. The emergency session of the Global Defense Council lasted 18 hours. President Kevin Walsh sat at the head of the long table, looking at the faces of Earth's most important leaders. Military commanders, scientists, and government officials from every nation had gathered in the underground bunker beneath Washington. The air was thick with tension and fear. Captain Jake Morrison had finished his report an hour ago, but the arguments continued. Some leaders wanted to surrender immediately. Others demanded that Earth fight, even if it meant certain death. Admiral Lisa Carter stood at the front of the room, pointing at images of Catherian ships on the main screen. Their smallest warships are bigger than our largest battleships, Lisa said. They have weapons that can destroy entire cities from space. Their shields can stop any missile or energy beam we can throw at them. General Pete Jackson slammed his fist on the table. So, what, we just give up? We hand over our children to be slaves? We let these aliens take everything we've built? Pete, be realistic, said Secretary of Defense Robert Cole. If we fight them, everyone dies. If we surrender, at least some of us survive. What kind of survival is that? Pete shot back. Working in their mines, building their cities, watching. Our grandchildren grow up as property of the Catherian Empire? President Walsh raised his hand for silence. We all understand what we're facing. The question is whether we have any other options. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had been sitting quietly in the corner studying data on her tablet. She was Earth's leading expert on advanced physics, and she had spent the last 3 days analyzing every piece of information the Defiant had brought back from Zephyros Prime. Actually, we might have another option, Amy said softly. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the small woman with graying hair and thick glasses. Amy stood up slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she connected her tablet to the main display. I've been studying the Catherian technology, she began. Their ships, their weapons, their power systems. Everything they use is based on something called exotic matter manipulation. General Jackson frowned. What does that mean in plain English? Amy took a deep breath. It means they use a type of matter that doesn't exist naturally in our galaxy. They have to create it artificially using massive amounts of energy. Without this exotic matter, their technology doesn't work at all. President Walsh leaned forward. Are you saying they have a weakness? More than that, Amy replied. I'm saying their greatest strength could become their greatest weakness if we're smart about it. She pressed a button, and the screen filled, with complex diagrams and equations. Most of the people in the room couldn't understand the mathematics, but they could see the excitement in Amy's eyes. What if we could disrupt their exotic matter? Amy continued. What if we could create conditions where their technology simply stops working? Admiral Carter stood up. How would we do that? Amy smiled for the first time in days. We'd turn our solar system into a weapon. Over the next few hours, Amy explained her plan. It sounded impossible, but the more she talked, the more excited the room became. Earth couldn't build better spaceships or stronger weapons, but Earth could do something the Cytherians would never expect. Within hours of the meeting, President Walsh activated the emergency protocol. Every military base on Earth received the same message. Humanity would not surrender, but they also wouldn't fight a conventional war. Instead, they would prepare for something that had never been attempted before in the history of warfare. Commander Rick Stone took charge of the military preparations. Earth's scattered fleets began moving into position around the solar system. To any observer, it looked like humanity was preparing for a hopeless last stand. Rick made sure it looked that way. We want them to think we're just being stubborn, Rick explained to his officers. We want them to believe they're facing the same kind of resistance they've seen 1,000 times before. Meanwhile, construction crews began working on secret projects all over the planet. Chief Engineer Maria Santos supervised the building of what looked like defensive installations. Underground bunkers, power plants, and communication arrays sprouted up in remote locations. But these weren't really defensive systems. Project Inferno was the code name for Amy's plan. Only a few hundred people on Earth knew what it really meant. To everyone else, it looked like humanity was just trying to build better defenses for the coming invasion. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked around the clock with her team of scientists. Alex Turner, a brilliant young physicist, helped her design the control systems. Lisa Hayes, an expert in gravitational mechanics, worked on the power calculations. Together they were building something that would either save humanity or destroy the entire solar system. The Cytherians were watching, of course. Their observation ships hung at the edge of the solar system, monitoring Earth's preparations. Captain Morrison led several missions to study these alien scouts, but he was careful not to get too close. The last thing humanity needed was for the Cytherians to realize what Project Inferno really was. 3 weeks into the preparation period, the Cytherians sent another delegation to Earth. War Commander Zethmore arrived with a small fleet of warships, landing at the lunar base where General Jackson was waiting for him. The alien commander was smaller than Vex-High, but no less intimidating. His crystal skin was darker, almost black, and scars covered his arms and chest. When he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass. I have come to offer you one final chance, Zethmore said. Supreme Chancellor Vex-High grows impatient with your delays. Surrender now, and your people will be treated with mercy. General Jackson stood straighter and looked the alien in his 4 eyes. Tell your Supreme Chancellor that humanity rejects his offer. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not become slaves to your empire. Zethmore made that glass chime sound that might have been laughter. Your courage is admirable but foolish. I myself have conquered 17 worlds. I have seen species far stronger than yours crumble before our might. Your small ships and primitive weapons cannot harm us. Maybe not, Jackson replied. But we're still going to try. So be it, Zethmore said. In 7 days the main fleet will arrive. You will have the honor of witnessing the full power of the Cytherian Empire before you die. As the alien ships departed, Jackson immediately contacted President Walsh. The timeline had been moved up. Project Inferno had to be ready in 1 week instead of the planned 2 weeks. Back on Earth, Amy Rodriguez received the news while standing in the main control room of the secret facility built deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was filled with computers, control panels, and displays showing energy readings from around the planet. Can we be ready in 7 days? President Walsh asked over the secure communication link. Amy looked around at her exhausted team. They had been working 18-hour shifts, pushing the limits of human engineering and physics. The project was incredibly complex, requiring precise coordination between installations on 6 continents. "We'll have to be," Amy said finally, "because if we're not ready when they arrive, there won't be a second chance." Chief Engineer Santos joined the conversation from her station in Antarctica. "The power systems are almost complete. We just need 3 more days to synchronize everything." "What? About the control systems?" Walsh asked. Alex Turner looked up from his computer terminal. "The software is finished, but we've never tested it at full power. We won't know if it works until we actually use it." President Walsh was quiet for a long moment. "So you're telling me that in 7 days we're going to bet the entire human race on a weapon that's never been tested?" "That's exactly what we're telling you," Amy replied. "But Mr. President, if this works, the Catherian Empire will never threaten anyone again. And if it doesn't work, we were all dead anyway." In orbit around Earth, the Catherian observation ships detected increased activity on the planet's surface. But their sensors showed nothing unusual. Just humans building more of their primitive defenses, preparing for a battle they could never win. The Catherians had no idea that deep beneath their feet, humanity was preparing to unleash forces that would change the nature of warfare forever. In 7 days, the Empire would arrive expecting to crush another weak species. Instead, they would discover that sometimes the smallest creatures bite the hardest. The countdown to Project Inferno had begun. The Catherian invasion fleet arrived exactly when War Commander Zethmore had promised. 3,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, their crystal hulls glowing like deadly stars against the blackness of space. Supreme Admiral Kexthu stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Conquest. He was the Empire's greatest military leader, a veteran of 47 successful invasions. His crystal skin was covered with golden scars that told the story of countless battles across the galaxy. "Scan the human defenses," Kexthu ordered his science officer. "Sir, they have approximately 200 ships positioned near their homeworld," the officer reported. "Their technology appears primitive. Fusion engines, kinetic weapons, basic energy shields." Kexthu made the glass chime sound that passed for laughter among his people. 200 ships against 3,000. These humans are either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both, sir," replied War Commander Zethmore, who had joined the flagship for the final assault. "I offered them mercy, but they chose death instead." The Catherian fleet formed into perfect battle formations, their movements coordinated by quantum communication systems that worked faster than light. Each ship took its assigned position in the vast formation that stretched across millions of miles of space. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter watched the alien fleet deploy from the command center aboard her flagship, the Indomitable. The human ships looked tiny compared to the massive Catherian vessels, like fishing boats facing a fleet of aircraft carriers. "All ships, maintain defensive positions," Lisa ordered through the communication system. "Remember, we're not trying to win a space battle. We just need to keep them busy." Captain Jake Morrison commanded the cruiser Valiant, positioned near Earth's moon. His ship was one of humanity's newest and strongest, but even it looked like a toy next to the smallest Catherian destroyer. "Captain, they're moving toward us," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Wells. "Estimated time to weapons. Range is 30 minutes. Jake nodded and opened a communication channel to his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. Today we face an enemy that has conquered thousands of worlds. They think we're weak. They think we'll break and run like all the others. They're about to learn that humans don't break easily." The first shots of the battle came from the Catherian fleet. Beams of pure energy lanced through space, striking the outer ring of human defensive satellites. The satellites exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their debris spinning away into the void. "Return fire," Admiral Carter commanded. Human ships launched their missiles and fired their energy weapons at the advancing alien fleet. Most of the attacks were absorbed by the Catherians' powerful shields, but a few shots got through, causing minor damage to the enemy vessels. The battle was exactly what everyone expected. The Cytherians advanced methodically, destroying human ships with overwhelming firepower. Their energy weapons cut through human armor like it was paper. Their shields turned away most human attacks without effort. Captain Morrison's ship took a direct hit from a Cytherian battlecruiser. The impact threw him across the bridge and emergency lights began flashing as systems failed throughout the Valiant. "Hull breach on Deck 7, shouted Lieutenant Wells. "Engineering reports main power is down to 60%. "Keep firing," Jake ordered, pulling himself back to his feet. "We're not done yet." But deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the real battle was about to begin. Dr. Amy Rodriguez stood in the control center of Project Inferno, watching displays that showed energy readings from all over the planet. Chief Engineer Maria Santos stood beside her, monitoring the massive power systems that connected installations on 6 continents. "All stations report ready," Maria announced. "Power levels are at maximum. The gravitational manipulation array is online and waiting for your command." President Kevin Walsh's voice came through the secure communication system from his bunker in Washington. "Dr. Rodriguez, you have authorization to begin Project Inferno. God help us all." Amy looked around at her team. Alex Turner sat at the main control station, his hands hovering over the activation keys. Lisa Hayes monitored the gravitational sensors that would tell them if their plan was working. These were the people who would either save humanity or destroy their entire solar system. "Initialize Phase 1, Amy ordered. Alex pressed the first sequence of buttons. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, massive machines began to hum with power. The installations built around the planet started drawing energy from the Earth's core itself, tapping into forces that had been building for billions of years. In space, the Cytherian fleet continued its advance, unaware that anything unusual was happening. Their sensors showed the same readings they always saw: primitive human technology failing under the assault of superior alien weapons. Supreme Admiral Kexthu watched the battle with satisfaction. Human ships were exploding or retreating all along the line. In another hour, the invasion would be complete, and he would add another victory to his legendary career. "Sir, we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the planet's surface," reported his science officer. "What kind of readings?" Kexthu asked, barely paying attention. He was focused on the tactical display showing his fleet's advance. "Gravitational fluctuations, sir. Very minor. Probably interference from their primitive technology being destroyed." Kexthu dismissed the report with a wave of his hand. "Continue the advance. I want ground forces prepared for planetary assault in 20 minutes. But the gravitational fluctuations were not interference. They were the first sign that Project Inferno was working. Deep in the Earth, the gravitational manipulation array was beginning to affect the fabric of space itself around the solar system. The plan was incredibly complex. Amy's team had discovered that the Cytherians' exotic matter technology depended on stable gravitational fields to function properly. By carefully manipulating gravity throughout the solar system, they could create conditions where exotic matter would become unstable. "Phase 1 complete," Alex announced. "Beginning Phase 2. More installations came online. The gravitational field around Earth began to shift in ways that were barely detectable to normal sensors. But for technology that depended on exotic matter, these tiny changes would soon become catastrophic problems. Captain Morrison's ship was falling back toward Earth's atmosphere, badly damaged but still fighting. Around him, other human ships were doing the same thing, appearing to retreat in disorder. But this was all part of the plan. "All ships, fall back to final defensive positions," Admiral Carter ordered. "Phase 3 is about to begin." The Cytherian fleet followed the retreating humans, moving deeper into the solar system. They were now exactly where Project Inferno needed them to be. In the underground control center, Dr. Rodriguez watched as her life's work approached its moment of truth. The gravitational manipulation array had taken 20 years to design and 7 days to build. If it worked, humanity would be free. If it failed, everyone she cared about would be dead within the hour. "All systems show green," Lisa Hayes reported. "Gravitational fields are stable and ready for full activation." Amy took a deep breath and looked at Alex Turner. The young scientist's face was pale, but his hands were steady on the controls. "Sir, I'm detecting more significant gravitational anomalies," the Catherian science officer reported to Supreme Admiral Kexthu. "These readings are becoming quite unusual." For the first time since the battle began, Kexthu looked concerned. "What do you mean, unusual?" "The gravitational fields throughout this system are fluctuating in patterns I've never seen before. It's almost like someone is manipulating them deliberately." Kexthu turned to stare at the tactical display with new interest. The human fleet was still retreating, still being destroyed. But something about their movement seemed too organized, too planned. "Could the humans be doing something to create these gravitational effects?" he asked. "Impossible, sir. They don't have the technology for that kind of manipulation. It would require an understanding of physics far beyond what they've demonstrated." But even as the science officer spoke, he was wrong. In the control center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Amy Rodriguez was about to prove that humans understood physics better than any species in the galaxy. "Activate Phase 3, she ordered. Alex Turner pressed the final activation sequence. Around the planet, every installation of Project Inferno came online at the same time. The gravitational manipulation array reached full power, drawing energy from the Earth's rotation and the planet's orbit around the Sun. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Catherian fleet began to discover that their greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. The exotic matter that powered their ships and weapons started to become unstable as gravity itself turned against them. The real battle was about to begin. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Catherian dreadnought Eternal Conquest suddenly stopped moving. Supreme Admiral Kexthu felt the massive ship shudder beneath his feet as the engines failed without warning. "What's happening?" Kexthu demanded, grabbing the nearest control panel as the ship lurched sideways. "Sir, we're losing power throughout the fleet," his science officer shouted over the sound of alarms. "The exotic matter containment systems are failing." On screens throughout the Catherian fleet, the same scene was playing out. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years were suddenly powerless, drifting in space like dead metal. Their energy weapons went silent. Their shields flickered and died. Their engines stopped working. But the humans didn't know what was happening yet. Captain Jake Morrison was still fighting to keep his damaged ship alive when he noticed something strange on his sensors. "Lieutenant Wells, are you seeing this?" Jake asked, staring at the tactical display. Sarah Wells looked at her instruments in confusion. "Sir, the Catherian ships have stopped firing. Their energy signatures are dropping rapidly. All ships, cease fire and observe," Admiral Lisa Carter ordered from the Indomitable. She couldn't believe what her sensors were telling her. The massive alien fleet that had been crushing them just minutes ago was now floating helplessly in space. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Amy Rodriguez watched her displays with growing excitement. The gravitational manipulation array was working exactly as she had hoped. The exotic matter that powered Catherian technology was becoming unstable as Earth changed the very nature of space around the solar system. "Gravitational cascade is spreading throughout the fleet," reported Alex Turner from his control station. "Their exotic matter is breaking down at the molecular level. Power levels holding steady," added Chief Engineer Maria Santos. "All installations are operating within normal parameters." Amy opened a communication channel to President Walsh. "Mr. President, Project Inferno is working. The Catherian fleet is completely disabled." In his bunker, President Walsh could hardly believe the news. "Are you certain, Dr. Rodriguez?" "Yes, sir. Their ships are just floating metal now. They can't move, they can't shoot, and they can't defend themselves." Supreme Admiral Kexthu was learning the same terrible truth on his flagship. His greatest weapons were useless. His mighty fleet was trapped in gravitational fields that made their technology impossible to operate. "How is this possible?" Kexthu asked his science officer. "The humans don't have this kind of technology." "Sir, I think they've somehow weaponized gravity itself," the officer replied, his voice shaking with fear. "They're manipulating the gravitational fields throughout the solar system. Our exotic matter can't remain stable in these conditions." War Commander Zethmore pushed his way onto the bridge, his crystal face showing panic for the first time in his military career. Admiral, we need to retreat immediately. The ground forces are reporting the same problems. Their weapons and armor have stopped working. On Earth's surface, Commander Rick Stone was getting similar reports from his troops. The Catherian soldiers who had landed on the planet were suddenly helpless. Their power armor had shut down, leaving them unable to move. Their energy weapons were dead metal in their hands. All units advance and capture the enemy forces, Stone ordered. Use non-lethal methods when possible. We want prisoners, not bodies. Human soldiers moved forward with conventional weapons that worked perfectly fine in the altered gravitational fields. The Catherians, trapped in their powered armor suits, could do nothing but surrender or die. In space, Admiral Carter realized that the tables had completely turned. All ships prepared to engage the enemy fleet. Target their engines and weapon systems. We want to disable them, not destroy them. The human fleet, using simple kinetic weapons and conventional technology, began systematically attacking the helpless Catherian ships. It was like a pack of wolves attacking sleeping giants. Captain Morrison's damaged cruiser, Valiant, fired its remaining missiles at a Catherian battlecruiser that had been pounding them just minutes before. The alien ship's shields were down, its weapons silent. The missiles struck the hull and tore through armor that no longer had power to protect it. Target their bridge, Jake ordered. Let's see how they like being on the receiving end. Supreme Admiral Kexthu watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by the same primitive weapons he had been laughing at an hour ago. Ships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed by missiles and energy beams that shouldn't have been able to scratch their paint. Sir, we have to do something, War Commander Zethmore pleaded. The humans are destroying everything. There's nothing we can do, Kexthu replied, his voice hollow with defeat. Without our exotic matter technology, we're helpless. We're trapped in their gravitational web. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the battle from her control center, watching as decades of careful planning came to fruition. The gravitational manipulation wasn't just affecting the immediate area around Earth. The effects were spreading outward, creating a zone where exotic matter technology simply couldn't function. The cascade effect is expanding, Lisa Hayes reported. It's now affecting an area of approximately 5 light-years around our solar system. That means no Catherian ship can enter this region and maintain their technology, Amy realized. We've created a permanent defense zone around Earth. The battle continued for 2 more hours, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a harvest. Human ships moved through the disabled Catherian fleet, capturing ships and taking prisoners. Some alien vessels tried to escape, but their engines wouldn't work in the altered gravitational fields. The turning point came when Captain Morrison led a boarding party onto the Catherian flagship. The Eternal Conquest was a massive ship, but without power. It was just a floating tomb. Human Marines in simple spacesuits moved through corridors filled with helpless aliens. Supreme Admiral Kexthu was found on his bridge, still trying to make his systems work. When Jake Morrison entered the command center with his troops, the alien leader looked up with his 4 eyes full of despair. I have commanded fleets across the galaxy, Kexthu said through his translation device. I have conquered 47 worlds. I have never been defeated in battle. There's a first time for everything, Jake replied. Surrender your fleet and your people will be treated with respect. Kexthu looked around at his useless control panels and dead screens. His mighty dreadnought was nothing more than scrap, metal floating in space. His career, his reputation, his entire civilization's dominance was ending in the most humiliating way possible. I surrender, he said quietly. The formal surrender came an hour later. War Commander Zethmore, speaking for the entire invasion force, transmitted the message that no Catherian had ever sent before. They were defeated by a species they had come to conquer. President Walsh received the surrender from his bunker, but he immediately ordered it transmitted to the Catherian homeworld. He wanted the Empire to know exactly who had destroyed their greatest fleet. This is President Kevin Walsh of the planet Earth, he said into the communication system. Your invasion force has been completely defeated. Your ships are captured, your soldiers are prisoners, and your technology is useless in our solar system. Tell your empire that humanity will never submit to tyranny. Dr. Rodriguez stood in her control center, exhausted but victorious. Around her, her team was celebrating the greatest scientific and military achievement in human history. They had turned Earth's apparent weakness into an unbeatable strength. But Amy knew this was just the beginning. The gravitational manipulation technology could be adapted and improved. Earth could build ships that worked in the altered gravitational fields while enemy vessels would be helpless. Humanity was no longer prey in the galactic jungle. What happens now? Alex Turner asked, still staring at the control systems that had changed everything. Amy looked up at the ceiling, imagining the captured Cytherian fleet floating helplessly above their heads. Now we decide what kind of species we want to be. We have the power to protect ourselves. The question is whether we use it to help others or become the thing we just defeated. In space, the human fleet finished collecting the disabled Cytherian ships. It was the greatest naval victory in Earth's history, one not with bigger guns or stronger armor, but with human intelligence and determination. The Empire had demanded submission. Earth had answered with Inferno, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 3 months after the battle, President Kevin Walsh stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York. The hall was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth, and billions more watched through television and internet, broadcasts around the world. Today I can officially announce that the threat from the Cytherian Empire has ended, Walsh said. Their invasion fleet has been completely captured. Over 15,000 alien prisoners are being held in secure facilities, where they are being treated according to international law. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Walsh raised his hand for silence. However, we must now face the consequences of our victory. The gravitational manipulation system that saved us has changed our solar system forever. Dr. Amy Rodriguez sat in the audience, listening as the president explained what Project Inferno had really cost humanity. The gravitational fields around Earth now made it impossible for any exotic matter-based technology to function within 5 light-years of the planet. This included faster-than-light travel systems used by most galactic civilizations. We are now isolated from the rest of the galaxy, Walsh continued, but we are also protected. No species that depends on exotic matter technology can threaten us again. Captain Jake Morrison had spent the last 3 months interrogating Cytherian prisoners and studying their captured ships. What he learned had shocked everyone in Earth's government. The Cytherian Empire was much larger than anyone had imagined, controlling over 10,000 worlds across multiple galaxies. But the Empire was also weaker than it appeared. Most of the species under Cytherian rule had been conquered easily because they had never developed effective resistance strategies. The Empire had grown soft and overconfident after millennia of easy victories. The prisoners have told us something important, Jake reported to the Global Defense Council. News of our victory is spreading throughout the Empire. Dozens of worlds are beginning to rebel against Cytherian rule. Admiral Lisa Carter had been analyzing the strategic situation for weeks. Earth's victory had created a power vacuum in the local galactic region. The Cytherian Empire was facing the first serious challenges to its authority in 10,000 years. We have a choice to make, Lisa told the council. We can stay isolated in our solar system, safe behind our gravitational barrier, or we can help the species that are fighting for their freedom. The debate raged for days. Some leaders argued that Earth should focus on its own defense and leave the rest of the galaxy to solve its own problems. Others believed that humanity had a moral obligation to help other species escape from tyranny. General Pete Jackson supported military intervention. We have the technology to build ships that can operate in altered gravitational fields. We could create a fleet that would be unstoppable against any exotic matter-based technology. But Chief Engineer Maria Santos warned about the risks. Building that kind of fleet would take years, and once we start expanding beyond our solar system, we might become the very thing we fought against. The turning point came when alien delegates began arriving at the edge of Earth's gravitational barrier. Ships from dozens of different species appeared in the outer solar system, all carrying the same message. They wanted humanity's help in overthrowing the Cytherian Empire. Commander. Rick Stone led the first diplomatic mission to meet these new allies. The delegation included representatives from the Zephyrian Republic, a collection of worlds that had been fighting a guerrilla war against the Empire for 50 years. Your victory has given hope to species throughout the galaxy, explained Ambassador Feltar, a tall being with blue skin and silver eyes. For the first time in centuries, we believe the Empire can be defeated. The Zephyrians brought detailed intelligence about Catherian military installations and weak points throughout their territory. They also carried messages from rebel groups on hundreds of worlds, all asking Earth for weapons and technical support. Dr. Rodriguez found herself at the center of another crucial decision. Her team had been working on new applications for gravitational manipulation technology. They could create portable devices that would disable exotic matter technology on a smaller scale. We could give these devices to rebel groups throughout the Empire, Amy explained to President Walsh. Without their advanced technology, Catherian forces would be vulnerable to conventional weapons. But Alex Turner raised concerns about the long-term consequences. If we spread this technology too widely, it could destabilize the entire galactic civilization. Species that depend on exotic matter for basic survival might face extinction. Lisa Hayes had been studying the broader implications of their discovery. The gravitational manipulation principle could revolutionize space travel. Instead of depending on exotic matter, we could develop new forms of faster-than-light travel based on conventional physics. President Walsh called for a global referendum on Earth's future role in galactic affairs. For the first time in human history, every person on the planet was asked to vote on whether their species should become involved in interstellar conflicts. The campaign lasted 2 months. Those who supported intervention argued that humanity had a responsibility to help other species achieve freedom. Those who opposed it warned that Earth could become trapped in endless galactic wars. Captain Morrison found himself speaking at rallies around the world, sharing his experiences with the Catherian prisoners. They told me that their empire has enslaved over 1 trillion beings, he said. We have the power to change that. The question is whether we have the will. Supreme Admiral Kexthu, still held in a maximum security prison on the moon, had become an unexpected source of information about the Empire's weaknesses. In exchange for better treatment for his captured soldiers, he provided detailed intelligence about Catherian military strategy. Your species is unique, Kexthu told his interrogators. In 10,000 years, we have never encountered a civilization that turned physics itself into a weapon. The Empire's leaders are terrified of what you might do next. The referendum results were announced on a Tuesday morning in December. By a margin of 68%, humanity voted to help liberate the galaxy from Catherian rule. But they also voted to establish strict limits on Earth's military involvement. President Walsh announced the decision to the world. We will provide technology and support to rebel groups fighting for their freedom. But we will not become conquerors ourselves. Earth will help build a galaxy where all species can choose their own destiny. Work began immediately on the new fleet. Unlike the captured Catherian ships, these vessels would be designed from the ground up to operate in altered gravitational fields. They would carry gravitational disruption weapons that could disable any exotic matter-based technology. Dr. Rodriguez was appointed to lead the new Galactic Liberation Project. Her team would develop the technology needed to free enslaved worlds while ensuring that Earth remained protected by its gravitational barrier. We're writing a new chapter in galactic history, Amy told her scientists. For the first time in millennia, the weak will have weapons that can defeat the strong. The first Liberation fleet launched 6 months later. 12 ships carrying human crews and alien volunteers crossed the gravitational barrier and headed for the nearest Catherian-controlled system. Their mission was to contact rebel groups and provide them with the technology needed to overthrow their oppressors. Captain Morrison commanded the flagship of this new fleet, a vessel designed with both human engineering and alien knowledge. As they left the solar system behind, he thought about how much had changed since that first diplomatic mission to Zephyros Prime. The Catherian Empire had demanded submission, believing that humanity was just another weak species to be conquered and enslaved. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that refused to accept defeat, even when facing impossible odds. Earth had answered with Inferno, turning the fundamental forces of the universe into weapons of liberation. Now that fire was spreading throughout the galaxy, carried by ships that could travel between the stars without depending on exotic matter technology, the age of easy conquest was ending. Across thousands of worlds, enslaved species were learning that their oppressors could be defeated. The gravitational manipulation devices were simple enough for any civilization to build, but devastating enough to neutralize the most advanced weapons. Within a year, the Catherian Empire began collapsing. Rebellions erupted on world after world, as subject species discovered they could defeat their masters. The Empire's fleets, dependent on exotic matter technology, became useless against enemies armed with gravitational disruptors. Dr. Rodriguez watched these developments from her laboratory on Earth, where she continued working on new applications for gravitational manipulation. The technology that had saved humanity was now reshaping galactic civilization, but she never forgot the lesson of their victory. The greatest weapons were not always the biggest guns or the strongest armor. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon was the determination of free beings who refused to surrender their liberty. The Empire had demanded submission, Earth had answered with Inferno, and the galaxy would never again bow to tyranny without a fight. The age of human influence among the stars had begun, not through conquest but through the simple principle that all intelligent beings